There are some truly great horror movie villains who absolutely terrify and excite us when they show up on screen. And then there's the rest. Oh sure, they may be fun, they may be entertaining, but they could have been so much more. With that in mind, I'm Sean Ferrick for What Culture Horror, and here are 10 horror movie villains who never lived up to their potential. Number 10, Mark Hoffman, the Saw franchise. Despite Jigsaw's minimal appearance in Saw, he quickly became as iconic as Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, primarily because of Tobin Bell's towering performance. Even though he infrequently showed up in Saw 2 and Saw 3, viewers never tired of the puppet-crafting mastermind's musings or witnessing his grisly tests. But since Jigsaw was terminally ill, the devious villain wasn't going to be around forever. And when he kicked the bucket in Saw 3, the saga could have ended there and then. However, in Saw 4 it was revealed that Jigsaw had a secret apprentice working behind the scenes. This protege was revealed to be Mark Hoffman, the same cop tasked with bringing Jigsaw down. Unfortunately, Hoffman is nowhere near as compelling as his mentor. The duplicitous officer fails to emulate the same menace as Jigsaw, despite being more ruthless. His backstory, although intriguing, is quickly discarded, turning Hoffman into a one-note baddie. His motivation keeps changing, making it difficult to understand what he's trying to accomplish. Despite having 5 movies to flesh out the character, Hoffman is never half as interesting as his predecessor. Number 9, Mr. Grey, Dreamcatcher. Stephen King has manufactured many haunting characters throughout his career, such as Cujo, Randall Flagg, and Pennywise. Sadly, the master of horror doesn't always hit a home run. Over the years, King has created just as many dumb villains, most notably Mr. Grey from Dreamcatcher. In the novel, this giant extraterrestrial has vowed to take over the world after human soldiers nearly wiped out his species. Strangely, Mr. Grey's backstory and motivation is never explained in the film, making him come across as a generic tyrant. Despite the fact the alien looks intimidating in his true form, he's rarely seen, since he possesses one of the protagonists, Jonesy, played by Damian Lewis, for most of the runtime. Although Dreamcatcher has a plethora of problems, one of the key issues is the way Mr. Grey is depicted while controlling Jonesy's body. For some reason, the possessed Jonesy, who is American, speaks in an old-fashioned British accent, dropping cliched phrases like "Hello, governor," every time he opens his mouth. Grey gurns and mugs to the camera so often, it's like he's doing an impression of Ace Ventura. As such, viewers can't help giggling every time Grey tries and fails to act sinister. Number 8. Roman Bridger, Scream 3. Like the previous installments, Scream 3 plays around with film tropes, especially while referencing trilogies. Thanks to a pre-death video recording, Randy informs heroine Sidney Prescott how trilogies tend to revolve around a deep dark secret stemming from the lead character's past. Sure enough, Ghostface is revealed to be Roman Bridger, the half-brother that Sidney never knew she had. Roman reveals their mother, Maureen, was raped by a producer. Traumatized by the experience, Maureen shunned her son, which caused Roman to snap. Jealous how Maureen doted over Sidney, Roman vowed to destroy his half-Sidney's life. The big reveal may be cheesy, but it kinda works, since the Scream franchise always pokes fun at movie cliches. However, things get too convoluted when Roman discusses his master plan. Bridger reveals that he was the one who convinced Billy Loomis and Stu Macher to murder Maureen, unnecessarily retconning key events in the original Scream. Rather than murdering Sidney straight away, Roman decided to direct Stab 3, an adaptation of the Ghostface killings. From the production, Roman recreated Sidney's interactions with Ghostface and his victims purely to mess with his sister's mind. Here's a question. Instead of going through with all this trouble to get under Sidney's skin, why didn't Roman just stab her? Sure, horror villains tend to devise over-elaborate plans, but Roman's scheme is way too over the top. Number 7. Cherub, Valentine. Valentine opens with nosebleed-afflicted teenager Jeremy Melton being erroneously accused of groping a classmate called Dorothy. Humiliated beyond repair, Jeremy becomes hell-bent on exacting revenge on those who wronged him. Years later, Kate learns a Cherub-masked stalker is murdering the women who falsely accused Jeremy. Because Cherub regularly suffers nosebleeds, all signs point to Jeremy being the killer. But when Kate's boyfriend Adam shoots Cherub dead, the masked maniac is revealed to be Dorothy, the same person who initially implicated Jeremy. Kate and Adam embrace, believing the nightmare is over. Suddenly, Adam's nose starts bleeding, proving he was the killer all along. At this point, viewers might assume that Kate will learn the truth, forcing her to fight her boyfriend to the death. Instead, the movie ends with Adam/Jeremy suffering no repercussions. It's not just the conclusion that's anticlimactic, but the reveal too. It was obvious Adam and Jeremy were one of the same. After all, he's the only male character in the movie. Also, having Dorothy as the villain would have worked better. The idea that she went insane because her lies destroyed a person's life is genuinely thought-provoking. But instead, Cherub was just another vengeance-based baddie, with horror fans having seen this countless times before. Number 6. The engineer, Prometheus. Due to Alien's steady decline in quality over the years, the sci-fi saga needed a reset. So when the director who kick-started the franchise, Ridley Scott, announced he was helming an Alien prequel called Prometheus, fans were pumped. Rather than delivering more of the same, Scott promised to introduce a new extraterrestrial called the Engineers, who were instrumental in creating not just the xenomorphs, but humanity. Although this was an unexpected move, it had the potential to expand the franchise's lore in a way never seen before. So, when the ensemble encountered the Engineer, viewers expected the colossal humanoid to divulge something of importance. Instead, the space jockey yells in an indecipherable language before attacking everyone. And because he dies soon after, viewers never learn about the entity's origins, plans, or his connection with mankind. Frustratingly, this scene would have offered many answers if the director stuck with John Spaihts' earlier script. This screenplay also offered more cohesion between the Engineer and the events of the original Alien. On top of that, the film was meant to conclude with the ensemble battling a gigantic xenomorph that spawned from the Engineer. How awesome would that have been? To ensure Prometheus served as its own story, Ridley Scott decided to shoot all these ideas down. But since the picture was criticised for its nonsensical plot, especially revolving around the Engineers, it's clear Scott's decision backfired. Number 5. Roland VOIGHT, HELLRAISER 2022. Even though Clive Barker's Hellraiser series has never been consistent, Doug Bradley's mesmerising performance as Pinhead cannot be faulted in any of his 9 appearances. As a result, the odds were stacked against Jamie Clayton when she was cast as the grid-faced demon in the 2022 reboot. Astoundingly, Clayton wowed audiences with her take, depicting the Hell Priest with commanding presence and chilling gravitas. The same cannot be said about her subordinate, Roland VOIGHT. Using the Cenobite's puzzle box, the hedonistic socialite sacrifices his guests, believing he'll reap otherworldly gifts for his loyalty. Instead, VOIGHT is left so mutilated, he wishes for death. When he orders the priest to revoke his gift, he's reborn as a Cenobite. Before viewers get a chance to see what sort of creature VOIGHT has become, the screen cuts to black. Even though 2022's Hellraiser is 2 hours, the audience learns very little about VOIGHT, making it hard to really care about him. Because Claire Higgins dominated as the human antagonist Julia Cotton in the original Hellraiser, VOIGHT seems more underwhelming by comparison. VOIGHT's transformation is fascinating to watch, but it's too little too late since the movie ends seconds later. Number 4. Albert Wesker, Resident Evil Afterlife. Capcom's survival horror series, Resident Evil, has created some of the most iconic antagonists in gaming, including Mr. X, Salazar, and Lady Dimitrescu. But let's not forget about Albert Wesker. The visionary virologist is often seen as the franchise's overarching villain, meaning his inclusion in the Paul W.S. Anderson's film adaptations was inevitable. After cameoing in Resident Evil Extinction, Wesker finally got the chance to showcase his power when he faced off against Alice in Resident Evil Afterlife. And boy is this scene a mess! Now, because the movie series botched beloved adversaries like Tyrant and Nemesis, fans expected it would be the same case with the shade-wearing scientist, but no one was ready for how laughable this depiction of Wesker is. With the actor's monotonous delivery, bad dialogue, and incomplete special effects, this potentially show-stopping scene comes across as hysterically cringy. What's worse is this sequence is a carbon copy of the epic confrontation scene in Resident Evil 5, except it's devoid of flair or tension. Wesker may have been a force to be reckoned with in the games, but his film counterpart is anything but. Number 3. MATHIAS LUND-HELGESEN, The Snowman. Based on Joan Nesbo's novel of the same name, The Snowman centres around Norwegian detective Harry Hole, who's investigating the disappearance of a young woman. Though the book was well received, the same cannot be said about the film adaptation. Due to the uneven tone, incomprehensible plot, and woeful acting, The Snowman was regarded as an unmitigated disaster. Worst of all, the MO of the murderer, Mathias Lund-Helgesen, is unintentionally hilarious. After Mathias commits his crimes, he leaves cryptic clues and the remains of his victims near snowmen. Although this concept gives off Zodiac Killer vibes, the presentation is totally off. Because snowmen aren't particularly scary, it's hard not to snigger when the camera zooms in on the snow-packed sculptures while ominous music blares in the background. The childlike doodles which Matthias leaves at the crime scenes look so silly, it's hard to believe they're supposed to be scary. And when one of his victims' head is found on top of a snowman, the goofy image looks like something from a parody. Even though the source material made the villain feel like a genuine threat, this adaptation depicted him as a joke. Number 2. Slenderman. Slenderman. After becoming an internet sensation, the film based on Slenderman was pretty much guaranteed. Tragically, the movie adaptation of the iconic creepypasta was a dumpster fire, due to its weak plot, trite dialogue, bland characters, and plodding pace. Of course, the biggest problem was the eponymous character himself. Slenderman's creepiness has always been stemmed from his unknowability. Little is canonical about the faceless humanoid, including his origins, motivations, or where he got that nifty suit. In creepypasta images and stories, Slenderman rarely does anything directly harmful, allowing horror fans to speculate endlessly on his true nature. Although he looks deeply unsettling, the vagueness surrounding his tales is what turned Slenderman into a modern legend. Unfortunately, the movie adaptation does away with all subtlety, turning the titular creature into a generic boogeyman. Rather than building up Slenderman slowly, his appearances are stuffed with ineffective jump scares, shaky cam, and distracting CGI. And when he transmorgifies into a colossal spider beast in the climax, viewers will wonder why the filmmakers were eager to make a Slenderman adaptation in the first place, since they clearly don't understand the character. Number 1. The Thing. The Thing, 2011. The Thing is such a flawless creature feature, it would be foolish to try and recreate it. Film producers Mark Abraham and Eric Newman were well aware of this when they had the opportunity to remake John Carpenter's magnum opus, and urged them to create a prequel instead. Although many were skeptical about this installment, and called The Thing, the filmmakers seemed to truly care about recapturing the spirit of Carpenter's picture. Rather than relying on unconvincing CGI, the crew used cable-operated animatronics, puppets, and prosthetics to bring the titular monster to life. Despite initial cynicism, 2011's The Thing was shaping up to be a solid movie. But late in production, the studio ordered for all practical effects revolving around the alien to be replaced with CG models. To the dismay of everyone, the final results were atrocious. Not only was the computer-generated creature unconvincing, it looked worse than anyone expected, since the VFX team had to rush through production to hit their deadline. What makes this CGI so off-putting is the fact that viewers could have seen a creature that, like the Thing itself, imitated the terror of the original, if it wasn't for the last-minute change. That's everything for our list today, folks. What do you think is glaringly missing here? Special thanks to James Egan, who wrote the original article. You can catch that over on the site. And thank you very much to yourselves for following along. Remember, you can catch us over on Twitter at WhatCultureHorror. You can catch myself at Sean Ferrick on Twitter as well. Until I see you again, make sure that you look after yourself. Make sure that you do what you can to live up to your potential. And most importantly, have yourselves a good week. Thanks very much.